The Pentagon has identified 3 of the 4 American soldiers killed in Syria this week. The attack also wounded 3 U.S. troops and was the deadliest assault on American soldiers in Syria since U.S. forces went into the country in 2015.
ISIS has claimed responsibility after President Trump said they'd already been defeated. He recently announced the U.S. would be pulling out of Syria, a move GOP Congressman Will Hurd is calling a terrible decision. We spoke to him earlier. Why?
It still is a terrible decision because ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, Jaish-e-Mohammed, all these terrorist groups, we need to start thinking of terrorism like influenza. We can immunize communities, but it's still going to exist. And so in Syria, there are still 40,000 known ISIS fighters in Iraq and Syria. Were they on the run? Absolutely. Were their capabilities diminished? Absolutely. And the president can take credit for that. General Mattis can take credit for that, for changing the realities on the ground. But the job wasn't over. And what that tells our allies that we're going to pull out is that, hey, you know, you can't count on us giving a long-term commitment. The attack that happened earlier in the week, why was that significant? The attack in Syria, excuse me. This location was controlled by the Syrian Kurds, and so this was ISIS showing a willingness to go into places outside of their control, outside of their friends' control, in order to commit an act of terror. That was them sending a message, and we can't allow. If the U.S. leads, there will be a vacuum. And when there is a vacuum, it will be filled, and it will be filled by people that shouldn't be filled. And this was the mistake that President Obama made when he pulled out of Iraq that led to ISIS becoming what it is, and we shouldn't make that mistake again.
And that's a good point, Congressman. Multiple presidents have made this error in the past. President Obama infamously called ISIS the JV team, as you pointed out. He, by pulling out early of Iraq, some people say that led to the emboldening of ISIS. We all recall President Bush landing on that aircraft carrier, mission accomplished, right? Far from it, because we are still fighting those wars today. Why do you think the president, who campaigned on some of those platforms saying, you know, President Obama always signaled what he was doing, I'm not going to do that, signaling to the world that ISIS was defeated, and now we have this terrible attack, the vice president goes in front of a national audience and talks about, basically regurgitates the president's talking points. What did you, when you saw that, what did you think?
Well, why they're doing it, you're going to have to ask them. But ultimately, for me, you know, signaling that we're going to pull out is a bad decision. I don't care who's making that decision. This is, you know, and we have to also think there was 2,000 troops. That's a very small footprint, and that shows how lethal, how potent, how good our U.S. military is in order to have that small of a footprint, in order to bring some stability ultimately to that region. I actually believe Bashar al-Assad needs to go, the president of Syria. He's the one that created the Syrian refugee crisis. He's the one that's killed millions of his own people. You know, you're not going to have stability in that part of the region until Assad leaves, and that's not going to happen if we're not there. So ultimately, this is nobody wants our boys and girls or wives or husbands or sons or daughters to be in harm's way. But it is a fraction of the cost, and it's safe to solve this problem over there before it hits our shores. And I think people forget the lessons that we learned 17 years ago, or excuse me, now 18 years ago, on September 11th, right here in New York City. That's still fresh in many of our minds. I was in the CIA when that happened, and we got to keep these folks on the run, because when we do that, they stay off our shores.